I caught SIL trying to break into my house. When her reason was revealed, I was stunned. I'm 27. When I married Kyle, my husband of 3 years, I was excited about our future together. We were the same age, and we had been through so much together, including the ups and downs of life, but nothing prepared me for what would happen next. Let me start by explaining a bit about my relationship with my family-in-law. Kyle and I had been dating for 6 years before we got married. Over those years, I had met his family several times, and while things were mostly cordial, there were always subtle tensions between Kyle and his parents, especially with his sister, Lizzie. It was clear that Kyle's family wasn't exactly thrilled with me being in his life. I never fully understood why, but Kyle had always told me that his family had their own issues with him that I didn't need to be involved with. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the warning signs. There were moments when Lizzie would make comments that seemed innocent on the surface, but carried a darker undertone. She would often mention how close she and Kyle used to be before I came along, or how their family dynamics had changed since he started dating me. At the time, I dismissed these comments as normal sibling nostalgia, but now I understand they were early signs of her possessive behavior. Lizzie, Kyle's younger sister, had always been an enigma to me. On the surface, she appeared sweet, helpful, and well-intentioned. But over time, I realized that she was quite manipulative, especially when it came to Kyle. She would often make passive-aggressive comments about his decisions or insinuate that he wasn't good enough for me. Kyle never really confronted her about it, and I tried my best to stay out of it, not wanting to stir the pot. But deep down, I was growing increasingly frustrated with the way she treated him. When Kyle and I decided to get married, we made sure to keep the event small and intimate. It was our day, and we didn't want anything to overshadow it. But, of course, Lizzie had other plans. She was persistent about being heavily involved in the wedding preparations, and while I appreciated her enthusiasm at first, it quickly became clear that she wasn't doing it for me. She wanted to be the center of attention, even if it meant undermining my decisions. At one point, she even tried to pick out my wedding dress for me. I felt cornered, but Kyle assured me it was just her way of trying to be part of the celebration. The wedding came and went without any major drama, but it didn't take long before things started to unravel. Lizzie and I had an uncomfortable conversation one afternoon when I was visiting Kyle's family. She was sitting at the kitchen table when she casually mentioned that she had noticed I was spending a lot of time with Kyle's side of the family, implying that I wasn't as close to my own family. I felt defensive, but I didn't respond. That conversation stuck with me, though. I couldn't shake the feeling that Lizzie was trying to create friction between me and Kyle. A few months later, Lizzie came to me with a proposition. She said she knew how much I valued family, and since Kyle wasn't as close with his family, she thought it would be a good idea if I tried to bridge the gap and help them reconnect. She claimed it was because she knew I understood the importance of family, especially when things got tough. She suggested that if I helped fix Kyle's relationship with his parents, I could be the one to make them see things my way. At first, I was flattered by her trust in me, but the more she spoke, the more I began to feel like she was trying to manipulate me into doing her bidding. She knew I didn't want to cause trouble with Kyle's family, but it was clear that this wasn't about healing relationships. It was about Lizzie wanting to control the narrative. I agreed to help, thinking that it could be a way to bring everyone together. But as I started to have more conversations with Lizzie, I realized I was being pulled into something I didn't want to be part of. Every time I tried to have a conversation with Kyle about his parents or his sister, he would shut it down, saying that he didn't want to deal with their issues and that he was happy keeping his distance. I understood that, but Lizzie's persistence began to wear me down. One afternoon, as I was getting ready to head to work, Lizzie called me. She was insistent. She asked if she could come over to our house while Kyle was out. She said she just wanted to chat about the family situation, and because I didn't want to cause conflict, I reluctantly agreed. But the moment she stepped into our house, I felt uneasy. She sat on the couch, looking around as if she were inspecting my home. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just her being her usual self. Then she asked me a question that caught me completely off guard. "Can I have a copy of your house key?" she asked, her voice casual but edged with something else. I was taken aback. "Why would you need a key?" I asked, confused. Lizzie gave me a strange look before explaining. "Well, you work from home, right? What if something happens to you? I'm just worried that if you're ever in trouble and Kyle's not home, I'll be able to come in and help you out. It's just a precaution, you know?" Her words felt strange, but I didn't want to overreact. I politely declined, telling her that if anything happened, I'd call Kyle. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of giving her access to our house without a valid reason. Lizzie's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. She seemed disappointed, but didn't press the issue further. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lizzie's request to have a key felt like an invasion of privacy, but I tried to convince myself it was just her being helpful in a weird way. However, things took an even stranger turn a few days later when I noticed that my house keys were missing from their usual spot. Panic set in. I checked every possible place they could be, but they were gone. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me as I realized that Lizzie had probably taken them. Without confronting her directly, I tried to stay calm and think of a plan. I couldn't be sure, but the timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. That night, when Kyle came home from work, I told him what had happened. He seemed surprised but didn't make much of it. "Maybe you misplaced them," he suggested. "But if you're worried, we can change the locks." I immediately started making plans to get the locks changed, but I also needed to confront Lizzie. I called her, but when she didn't pick up, I decided to visit her apartment the next day. When I arrived, I knocked on the door. A man I had never met answered. I asked if I could speak with Lizzie, and he told me that she didn't live there. I was confused. Lizzie had given me that address the last time we spoke, but this man seemed certain she wasn't there. I showed him a picture of Lizzie, and he said he had never seen her. My heart raced as I texted Lizzie, asking her why she had lied to me about where she lived. Her response was curt. "You've got the wrong address." My mind was spinning. Why had she given me that address? Why had she lied about everything? When I came home, I felt on edge. My husband noticed immediately. "What's going on?" "You seem tense," he asked. After some hesitation, I confessed everything to him. I told him about the key request, the missing keys, and how I had been lied to about Lizzie's address. He listened carefully, but I could tell he was processing it all. That night, he made it clear that we needed to change the locks immediately and that Lizzie's behavior was unacceptable. We got a locksmith to come in and change the locks to ensure our safety. I blocked Lizzie's number and social media accounts, cutting off any further contact with her. But the story doesn't end there. 3 weeks after changing our locks, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, our neighbor called me in a panic. She had been tending to her garden when she noticed someone suspicious trying to get into our house through the back door. The person was wearing dark clothing and appeared to be using some kind of tool to manipulate the lock. "I recognized her right away," she told me later. "It was your sister-in-law. I've seen her at your house before. She was acting very strange, looking over her shoulder constantly. When I called out to her, she ran away." I immediately called the police and Kyle. The responding officers took our statements and my neighbor's detailed description. They found scratch marks around our back door lock, confirming that someone had indeed tried to break in. What made it even more chilling was that they found a small notebook dropped near our back gate. Inside were detailed notes about our daily routines, when we left for work, when we came home, even when we usually did our grocery shopping. The police managed to track down Lizzie at her actual address, not the fake one she had given me. When confronted, she broke down and admitted to everything. She had been stalking us for weeks, convinced that I was somehow turning Kyle against his family. In her disturbed mind, she believed that if she could just get inside our house, she would find evidence that I was manipulating him. Kyle was devastated when he learned the full extent of his sister's actions. The police wanted to press charges for attempted breaking and entering, but Kyle couldn't bring himself to see his sister arrested. Instead, we opted for a restraining order, which was granted immediately given the evidence and our neighbor's witness statement. The aftermath of this incident sent shockwaves through the family. Kyle's parents initially tried to downplay Lizzie's actions, suggesting that she was just worried about her brother. But when they saw the notebook with her detailed surveillance notes, even they couldn't deny the severity of the situation. They finally agreed to get Lizzie professional help, something that Kyle had been suggesting for years. The months following the break-in attempt were difficult. We installed a comprehensive security system, complete with cameras and motion sensors. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the anxiety and trust issues that developed from this experience. Even simple things like checking the mail or being home alone became challenging for a while. Kyle and I grew closer through this ordeal, but his relationship with his family became more complicated. His parents struggled to understand why we wouldn't just forgive and forget, especially after Lizzie started therapy. They would sometimes try to guilt us into lifting the restraining order, saying things like, "Families should stick together," and "she's getting better now." But we stood firm in our decision. This experience taught us both that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for your family is to maintain strong boundaries. We learned that love doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior, and that protecting our peace and safety isn't selfish, it's necessary. Today, our life has found a new normal. We've moved to a different neighborhood, partly for my peace of mind and partly for a fresh start. Lizzie continues with her therapy, and while we hear she's making progress, we maintain our distance. The restraining order is still in place, and we've made it clear to family members that we're not ready to change that. I'm learning to trust my instincts now, to set boundaries even with family, and to always prioritize my own well-being and the safety of my home. And though the situation was complicated, I am grateful to have a husband who supports me, who believes in our future together and in protecting our peace. This experience, as difficult as it was, taught us both valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and the importance of facing problems together rather than trying to maintain a facade of family harmony at any cost. Sometimes I think about the woman I was at the beginning of this story, so eager to please and maintain peace that I ignored my own instincts. I wish I could tell her that it's okay to trust her gut, to set firm boundaries, and to protect herself without feeling guilty. But perhaps that's the silver lining in all of this. Sometimes the hardest experiences teach us the most important lessons about who we are and what we deserve.